Hi,
Hey.
Dave.
Hey, Morgan.
What you doing?
You got to see this.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
We're gonna have some fun. I found this chunk of spalting birch, and we're gonna cut it up and make a guitar out of it.
Cool. Come on in.
Come on in, let's make a big mess. Grab that door, would you?
Yep.
So what we're going to do here is turn this local wood into a piece of fruit. I've found some really cool spalted birch. Spalted is on the verge of rot, but it offers really, really interesting color patterns, as you can see. It'll be a challenge because there's some knots here and there. It's not perfect, but you know, people build guitars out of pallet wood. So we're gonna make it work. The size of the instrument we're gonna build is a Parlor. A short scale Parlor. There's a lot of variations of Parlor sized instruments, but this one's pretty close to the average body shape. And the scale length will be a short scale, which means it's going to be less than 25 inches. Once I've started my cut and I feel like it's going to cut straight, I'm just going to give myself a reference line. Got some beautiful knots in there we're going to have to work around, but you know, we'll make it work. Okay, we're going to send it through. We're going to check to make sure we have a nice parallel, and if not, we'll adjust. So we now have a set we can mate together. Once we got through our rough planing, you can start seeing the color come through of this Lutz. And I'm real happy now that I can get a good look at the tightness of the annual rings. And our objective is to get it down to get these top plates down to 90 thousandths. We're getting close. And I think I'm going to just get close to it and then finish it off with a thickness sander. We're going to join these plates. Now that they're to the proper thickness, we're going to call them plates. It's pretty easy to identify the book matching aspect of this. They started this way, and then once we resawed them, then we open them up. Then we sent them through the planer, and the planer did a pretty good job on this softer wood, but we achieved our 90 thousandths, and that's going to give us plenty to work with when we start sanding the surface down the road. I have a nice steel ruler, and before I start joining them together, and taking this out all the time, I just do a quick check. And I'm happy with that so far. I did these a little bit ahead of time because sometimes it can take a while to get it right. But once we achieve this nice straight line, it might be hard to see, but we do what's called candling, and you hold them up to the light, and anywhere you can see light through it, you need to stop and reset up and rejoin it, and then check it again and again. The back set is a little different than the top set. Reason being, it gets a seam strip. And now and then when I have idle time during our long winters, I'll pick up scraps of wood that I have and I'll piece wood together that I think will look nice in combination with other woods. And I've always wanted to do this spalted birch. And so I chose a couple complementary colors. The center is ebony. The sides are probably claro walnut. They're small strips. It's hard to tell. I have so many scraps of these type of things around. And after candling the back and side set, or the back set rather, I'm good to go. Often, even myself and other builders will glue everything together at once. Sometimes it's a little easier, and I have time. I'm not a production builder. I'll just glue that seam strip on and leave it for 30 minutes, and then I'll glue the other side to it. And this way I know I'm getting a super tight fit. I don't have this strip in the middle so that when I squeeze this together it pops up. Sometimes that happens while you're in the middle of trying to compress this glue joint. So we're just going to do it one side at a time because I can. Using your typical alphaic yellow glue. Okay. No muss, no fuss. And there's some very good clamping pressure on it. This is how I bend sides. There's other ways. There's, what's called the fox bender. I've thought about building one. Again, I'm not a production builder. I do this mostly for fun. And it's a fun therapeutic process, I think, when you heat wood up and get it to bend to your will. I came in the shop this morning and I took the side set and just sprayed them with some water. And I also have my pattern. I chose which is going to be the top of the guitar and the bottom of the guitar. So I just applied that to this morning. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But in this case, because this is spalted, almost on the verge of rotting, falling apart, I didn't want to bend any more wood than necessary. A lot of times folks will leave things a little taller than that. So it'll with less wood to bend, meaning width-wise, it'll bend easier. You also have to choose which is going to be which side. They're both equally interesting. I'm probably going to make this the outside. And again, you don't see a lot of builders selecting wood that is spalted like this or with knots in it. I'm doing this for fun, and I think it's gorgeous and interesting wood. And we'll just work around it. It's not going to hurt anything. So it's going to have a lot of character, that's for sure. This one has a knot that's got a depression. We'll just keep that on the inside. So this is going to be my outside. I start here and I just start getting that bend in, and then we do the waist and then the back, and I have these clamping cauls that are exact fits to the mold. And I'll put some gloves on so that I don't burn myself. So we want to make this first upper bout curve. You just get the wood good and hot, rock it on there, and you'll know it'll start to yield. And if I have to fake that knot down the road, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're back, and we've got our top glued together. I touch sanded it, and I'm really happy with the seam. Came out good. So we had good success with our joint gluing for the back. You know, you flex them a little bit, and as I've said several times with regards to this particular spalted birch, it's right on the cusp of rot. It developed this color due to a fungus that gets in there. It's a type of rot fungus. But again, it offers some really neat character, and you know, there is a way that we can stabilize so that we can use this wood and it'll hold up structurally. Having said that about it being maybe a little bit weak or any fear of breakage along some of these cool veins, I decided that I'm going to veneer it. I don't think it's going to affect the sound. And remember, this is a Parlor guitar. They're not known for big sound. It'll sound great, but we want to make this wood work. When last we saw this, we were veneering the back, and it came out great. I was super happy with it. Nothing delaminated. The thickness is what I want. And I kind of did an oversize earlier, but I'm going to retrace the actual. And I feel like I got lucky on this in that messing around with orientation, I was able to get some of these bigger knots out. That's just not a good looking knot. We kind of missed all the cool dark veining, but so far so good. All these little steps make it exciting. You're starting to see the shape, and you've captured where all the grain and character is going to fall within our body. And I think because that's going to be shown through the sound hole, I think I'm going to hit this a little with some 220 sandpaper before I start laying out my back brace lines and my center strip lines. I want to transfer the lines from the seam strip to the back, and from there I can use a small square and I can develop all my lines. First thing though, I'm going to find that absolute center. My bracing is just a little bit different. I'm adding a little bit more. I think modern strings probably offer a little bit more tension, so I want to kind of fight against that. So anyway. Now the thing you'll notice if you have an acoustic guitar, look at it sometime and look at the back, and you'll see that it's got a bit of a dome to it. Some more than others. I think it's the preference of the builder. I've seen some that were radical. And then also, there's a bit of a dome this way. So you have compound curves going on. But the wood will the wood will yield when you start putting clamps to it. I know that's my center. I know that I want 1/8 of an inch. I know I want 1/8 of an inch in a dome. So one thing, when you've free-handed curves and stuff enough, you start to develop an eye for it. There's a little bit of tune-up to do here, but it's still pretty darn good. Okay, I'm happy with that. 3 and 4. Okay. So I have a little bit of water here, and I have a dampened piece of paper towel. This is just a nice stiff little paintbrush that I can get in for glue cleanup, and a nice little trick that we use is a straw. The objective is to take a lot of this extra wood out, trying not to destroy the inside. You'll also see builders turning their chisel this way. That doesn't work for me. I like the bevel down so that I can scoop with it. You can see, have some nice pyramids there that are slightly rounded. They'll need to be sanded. Doesn't take long to do that, but it's coming along. We'll talk about this sound hole and the Rosette right now. There's a few different size sound holes, and like everything with guitars, one thing will affect another. I've read that you can lose bass with a bigger sound hole. I even read a conflicting opinion on that. All the builds I've been doing, I've been going by plans. I don't do a lot of experimenting. However, this guitar build, we're experimenting mostly with the woods. This inner line represents the sound hole. These two lines are going to be our Rosette. And this design and plan just kind of coming together as I go. So I'm really liking this spalted birch. But what I did was I kept all the cutoffs, and I've drawn out my sound hole. And as you can see, I'm on a piece of plastic here. Reason why is I don't want any of this to stick when I glue it down, because we're going to use super glue. These are the little strips, little pieces of the rosewood. Okay. Now you can sort of see. You might ask, why did I not make a complete circle? Well, remember the fretboard comes down into the right up into the sound hole, so there was really no point in making a complete circle. But we're going to just put this off to the side for a little bit. So I do my hole edges with this fine bit, and then I'll go and switch to a thicker or a bigger diameter bit where I can hog it out. The other trick to this is really get yourself set up. Get everything out of your way. You don't want to have obstacles when you're trying to swing, because you're trying to be very precise here, keeping it flat so that you maintain the proper depth. You don't want to tilt, you don't want to lift out by mistake. So I start out with, I lift up, then I plunge. Loosen that up. Now I'm going to adjust this to go to the outside of the hole. You know, and the thing about rosettes, sound hole rosettes is, you know, the sky is the limit. You can do anything you want with these. Next thing we're going to do is take out everything that's in between the lines with a bigger bit. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do too is right here on the edge, I'm just going to make myself a reference area for depth. So I'm going to put that aside. Now we're going to cut this rosette ring to fit in here. Using my soundboard, I'm just going to carefully reposition where I want to cut. Off camera, I sanded a little bit flush, partly because I couldn't wait to see how it came out. And I wanted, if there was any corrections that needed, I figured I'd do them then. But it came out great. Sometimes it's necessary to clean your tip a little bit. This part of the operation is like making jewelry. Rosewood's pretty tough stuff. Now I'll take something that's hard and just it's a very, very nice fit, but they're never perfect. So our glue is cured or dried, however you want to say it. Going to shave that down, have a look. Well, we're going to pick back up on getting the last outer ring in around the sound hole, or the rosette. Have a piece of ebony. Just a review, you know, having looked at it last time, I had two of the same size rings planned, and I decided that I wanted a bigger ring on the outside. And this rosewood, the spalted birch, and the ebony will keep in form with the material on the back, which is the same wood. So we've got the channel routed out, and then I painstakingly thinned out a piece of ebony, and we're just going to pop it in there, and then I'll just kind of kiss it a little bit with a sanding block to knock some sanding dust down around it, and then we'll flood it with some super glue, And speaking of that, previously you heard me complaining a little because I couldn't get any glue. And I went to town and I dug way in the back of a shelf and I found one bottle of medium. I would have preferred thin, but this will work. I'm not going to complain. One of the steps in making this, cutting it on the bandsaw, then I lay it flat ways, and I use my razor blade as a scraper. Ebony is so brittle. You know what I mean? We're gonna reset up our Dremel with this compass base. We're gonna cut the biscuit out of the sound hole now that we're done. This is believe it or not, some book matched LUTs. I kept all the cutoffs from that log, and it will work just great for bracings. Split it open, and maybe we'll get equal sound transfer out of that, hopefully. There is some higher frequencies in there. And then, as I say, as we start adding wood, it's going to change. I haven't said this before. It's a very satisfying operation. So we've got all of our braces carved back. There's going to be some sanding. One other thing I forgot to do is put this lap splice on. So I'm just going to pop it in the go bar deck, and we're going to move on to the carving the side supports. But anyway, coming out pretty good. And well, let's do some more sound check. Getting better and better. I think we'll go ahead and mark this. It's always good to do a dry fit of everything before you commit. Everything stayed center. We have no big spaces around here. If I did miscut this and ended up with any spaces, I wouldn't have any problem separating that seam a little bit and putting a shim in there just to get it glued up in the right location. The reason is there's going to be a big cutout where the neck heel goes on top, and then there's going to be a graft that goes in the bottom. So I'm not worried about making a beautiful seam where they come together. I just want it to come together nice and be flat, which it is. So this is ready to be glued. So we are back. The glue dried for our tail block. We're going to do the head block. And I should mention also, you saw that I chose to glue this while it was in the mold. I did it so that I could keep this flush and keep things straight and square. So we're going to move on to our side set, which we glued together. Just going to rest it here and keep. This is going to be the top surface, which is going to be the flatter of the two, because the back is curved. And I give myself a stop block. One thing about our side set in the mold, you see I put my clamping cawls back in, and I have this force fit block that I could pop out anytime, and it'll actually stay. It'll come out when we do our side supports, and then it will go back in. That's what these notches are for, so that it can work around the side support. But it will go back in until the top and the back are glued on, and then I can reach inside the sound hole and wiggle it out and then take these out. But it helps maintain that shape. Then this is my big secret weapon. It's a piece of flooring sander it's probably 80 grit, and I put it on a piece of MDF, which is very flat. There's another tool that gets used on the back more, which I learned this out of one of my guitar building books. It has a 5 and a 2 degree bevel to it, and that's to accommodate the slope of the back and the sides. Another thing I do to just keep checking myself, I've got a gauge on my gauge. Well, pulled the back out of the press. Everything looked good. I trimmed back the top and bottom seam supports so they'll fit nicely in between. Fits like a bug in a rug, and it has its parabolic shape this way and this way. So this is kerfed lining here. These are all my scraps. I use them up. I think I pointed this out the other day. You can do internal and external curves. Their job is to provide a bigger gluing surface for your top and back. And we're going to make our side supports. Some might ask, how do you know where to put those? Well, I kind of put them in the most obvious areas to me, right in the waist. Guitars get banged right there, they get banged right there. I try to space them out. It's not perfect. We have all of our side supports in. Off camera, where our knots were, I filled those with epoxy. I think that'd be our best approach, because epoxy will saturate the area. And on this top, we're going to use the 2 degree because we don't want it as steep. Ready to go. are going to do a little work on the back side surfaces so we can mate up the back. We had success, got the top on. It's getting better and better and better. So I just got my pad here, protect our beautiful top. We're going to switch over to our steeper 5-degree wedge because remember the back is quite a bit more parabolic than the top. I don't know if you can see those curves like that. So that's where we start. And I put my pencil mark around the edge as an indicator. And then I remember I can hog some of this out, as we say. Okay. So anyway, we pulled it off. So here, see this here, this pattern? I use this as a caul, meaning a big pad. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I just got all the clamps off. I was too excited. Then I told myself I better stop. We're going to take this out of the mold. We'll just keep piling things in our way as we go. You know, it's a nice fit and shape when the mold doesn't want to come off. So we're going to put that away. Got good squeeze out everywhere. That's good. Okay. And then my favorite part.
Oh my word. That sounds fabulous.
Aha. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is set up our laminate trimmer, and we're going to take all this excess off. So when you're routing guitar tops, particularly the spruce, and you need to worry about grain run out that leads to blowout. I have seen other builders just go right around fearlessly. Great. I had one blowout once in my life, and I'm not going to. Blowout is when the grain gets caught in the bit, it just blows out. So you have to, so the grain runs this way longitudinally, and it runs out here. So I'll make myself some marks where to stop and start. So we're going to be going into the grain here, which can lead to a blowout. So we're going to start here and go backwards. Then we're going to go to here. The grain runs out. There's no risk of blowing this out. Then once we get into the waist, we go to the outside of the bout and go backwards, and then we go forwards. And so that's just the way that I do it, because I don't want to risk, after all this work, a blowout. And I have to resist the urge to go around again, and I could go around the whole way because there's nothing hanging over and I might get a tighter cut. However,
Burrs on the bottom. You got burrs everywhere.
well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I resist the urge to go all the way around, because I could get tear out on the top now, not the sides.
Right.
It's just a clamping jig, so that we can next do the end graft where the two sides at the bottom of the guitar come together. So we are going to use just a piece of ebony. Try and not complicate things. We're going to do it in a wedge. Nice thing about a wedge is you can push it inward toward the thinner end to make it very tight. First thing I'll do is find out where I want to start with it. I've already marked the center. We find ourselves at another step, which is a fun one. We're going to put the trim on, which is called binding. We got our end graft done yesterday. Kind of a no frills, just keeping the wood motif colors going. What we're going to do is use this leftover sapele that I've had kicking around. We're using what we have. When my daughter was young, she left behind lots of construction paper. And I got the bright idea to make purfling, which is the inner trim, with some construction paper, and I laminate it together. Typically you see black, white, black, and I got the bright idea to do black, red, black, and you'll see later on in the build how I'm going to tie that in. Just give it a little bit of color. It's very subtle. This is just heavy duty construction paper that I glued with our carpenter's glue. And I figure, you know, wood is, as we said earlier, felted wood fiber. So it will hold glue. And this is going to get split down the middle. We talked earlier about wood blowing out. This Lutz and spruce and cedar, very, very soft. And these are all very sharp, fairly new router bits. But even so, they still tear the soft wood. So I've gone around the edges and I've just flood the area that I'm gonna router with super glue. And believe it or not, it prevents, well, it reduces tear out. So talk quick about the setup. We're going to use the same laminate trimmer. I have a different base that I modified with some extra parts. First thing we'll do though is with a scrap piece of wood, I'll set the depth. We're going to split this purfling material that we laminated right down the middle, so I have two pieces. Okay, so we got our ledges all routed out, got the heater up and going. we're going to pre-bend this binding. We don't want to have any breakage along the way. So here we are, back to just the final touches. I got everything flush sanded, meaning everything that stood proud, the binding that is, I flush sanded it, and we're maintaining that nice flat surface all the way across. That process, you have to really stay on the ball so that you don't take off too much and end up with too thin of a binding. You want to maintain the same thickness, and I do it by eye all the way around. Same for the back. The back I like to make a little bit thinner, and to do that I just angle my scraper a little bit. But everything has been a success so far, and I'm super happy with my experiment with laminating colored construction paper. It's going to open up a whole new world of ornamenting guitars now, I think. My brain is starting to get new ideas for color variations. Paper is a form of wood when you think about it. I call it felted wood because it's made with mush. But anyway, I'm sure I damaged my hearing in my construction life, but I could still hear a sustain in there. Okay. This is another piece of mahogany. This happens to be African mahogany. It's not a super expensive wood. It's easily obtainable, unlike nowadays Honduras mahogany, which is usually the most desirable, but it's very, very expensive. Add freight and shipping to send it to this little town in Alaska, and it just drives the cost of everything up. So this is the wood we're going to use for our neck. Typically with all my builds, I was buying pre-made fretboards, and these are for guitars that were joined at the 14th fret. I used to be able to buy these for $15. It's been radiused, fret slotted, pretty inexpensive really. I thought, I am a woodworker, I can make this. So with all these Parlor guitar projects I have lined up, including this one here, I just decided because they're all going to be the same, I'm just going to make them, and I bought some blanks, and they were well over $15. But I need to learn how to do this, so that's where we're at with this. Couple different things that I'm going to do with this. Well, I do it with all my guitars. I learned from a master luthier in Maine, Nick Apollonio, who exclusively builds with a 0 fret at the nut. and he does an adjustable neck heel. And that means rather than a bolt-on or a dovetail, which is a fixed neck joint, he taught me how we cut a cavity out. I make mine a little deeper than he does, but we're going to carve out a little less than 3/8 of an inch out of here. The neck is going to fit tightly down in that slot, but not so tight that it's not going to be able to move. The adjustment is in the strap jack screw that goes all the way through, and it's threaded into a ferrule inside the neck block. Anytime you're playing along and you feel like your action's too high or too low, literally the turn of a Phillips head screw, a quarter turn, will raise or lower your action. I've read some luthiers say you lose sound. I have fixed necks and I have adjustable necks, and I can't hear the difference. And I'm not going to argue with somebody that's been building this way since 1967. And I've met several other master builders that have their own version of adjustable neck heel. Yes, there's sound transmission from the neck to the body or vice versa. But all these adjustable neck guitars still sound wonderful. And having the ability to adjust that on the fly is huge. This guitar will never need to go to a repair shop for a neck reset. Just this morning, I did a little more research and decided 100% that I'm going to use the 24 3/4 short scale. A short scale is anything less than 25. Again, this instrument is going to be joined at the 12th fret versus commonly at the 14th, which is a lot of the bigger guitars. When you're building with a 0 fret, you have to leave a little bit of space between your first fret and your nut. And I'm going to leave 1/4 of an inch. And then basically that becomes the nut, that first fret, or the 0 fret. Starting to look like a neck profile. We're going to clean this surface up here to be perfectly square and flat. I've got a nice flat surface there. I'll scrub it and clean it up, and then we'll glue that together. Well, we're back on the neck. We got our scarf glued nicely and really happy with the seam. Don't want to see a big old ugly glue joint. So that's good. I cleaned this surface up, marking my fretboard blank at the 12th fret, which is going to join the body. And we're also doing a 0 fret up at the top. So I left a little bit of room for my nut. That one white mark will be our 0 fret, or our dimension for the neck heel buildup. These are going to be stacked like so. I'm just going to see what I need, and this dimension will go from the top of the guitar to the back side of this binding. When you do an adjustable inset neck heel, I don't go into the binding, I go right up to it. So just for a rough dimension for right now, it's going to be 3 1/8. 3 1/8. Perfect. Luck was on my side today. And we're going to trim this down a little because we're going to put a neck heel cap on it. I haven't decided what we're going to use yet. We're going to just glue these and clamp them. So as you can see, got a nice peg head scarf. It's good to go. We're committed. It's been squared off. I'm very happy with, nothing's twisted. Everything's in a straight line as it should be if we did our job right. And again, that's the model we're going to use. Put the headstock veneer on. I'll redraw this, but for right now, I just wanted to show exactly what we're doing. We're going to talk about what we're going to put on this. The sky's the limit, you know, when you're doing these. And I do have some more of this leftover spalted stuff. It's pretty dramatic. I'm not worried that it's not book matched. We're going to move on to our next task. Going to put a truss rod in. A quick review of a truss rod. There is a threaded rod inside this channel. Pull this nut off. There's a threaded rod in here. When the nut's back on and you turn it clockwise to put compression on it, it will bow this aluminum channel. And when this is epoxied into the neck, when you tighten that up and put the bow in it, it'll put a bow in the neck, which then counteracts the string tension. And again, a quick review. There's two ways to get at your adjusting nut. You can come in through the sound hole, which nowadays is very typical. The old style, but it's still used. You come in from the peg head and it has a cover on it. I'm going to do it that way because I'm kind of reproducing an old style guitar. We're going to do a slotted peg head. So I routed out, or dadoed out the slot. I opted to not go up into the headstock. I want to do that portion by hand. So I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. Fine tuning, as they say. Rough thickness, our peg head, got our fence set up. Like I say, this slotted peg head is, I wouldn't say new territory, but I don't have jigs and patterns for it yet. Beautiful. So I'm just hardening the inside as a wear. It's just as a wear surface for the string shaft. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut our curve.
Right.
Okay, so we're to the next step. Got the outer shape of our peg head finalized. I'm pretty happy with that. Next thing's going to be to go ahead and put the slots in, and that will give us access to the strings. Okay, so we've got our slots pretty much dialed in. There's a little bit of sanding to do just to clean them up a little. The next thing we're going to do is ramp these holes, particularly down here, because once the nut goes on, and this nut is way too tall for right now, but we want to make sure that the strings, when they pass through this nut, that they don't hit wood. You want to just get a little bit of space under them. My distance is good. My height here needs to come down. That is a slotted peg head. Ready for our next step. And I think we're going to just continue on getting this all done. Next thing we're going to do is jump into the inlay. I'll look at it closer, might be a little tuning up here and there. We're going to jump over to the fretboard and just kind of go over with all these components. This is our truss rod, as we've talked about. And when I put it in the miter box, which you'll see in a minute, I want it to be in there square and parallel. But for now, I'll just show and explain what we're doing here. This is going to be our nut. This is the nut blank. It's going to live here. Its job in this case with a 0 fret is to simply hold the strings where they belong. It's not going to elevate the strings. In fact, the slots will be cut a little lower than the string. This first slot will be a fret, which acts as a nut in this case. The strings will rest on that first fret. It's called a 0 fret. But anyway, this is sort of, we're going to work away from that. I'll mark everything with a fret scale ruler, and then we're going to put it in the miter box and gently cut. Again, you've seen this. This is our fret scale ruler. We chose the 24 3/4 fret scale, which is a short scale. I found the center of the fretboard blank. I've determined that with my wedge, everything is going to be nice and square. So I'm just going to lay it on there. And I'm sure that I've mentioned with the design of this guitar, so I transferred the holes for the strings. We're going to move on to getting the thickness of our neck very close to where we want it. I've made a board that's going to slide on my drill press, and I put a wedge on one end so I could tilt the neck up. This is going to be my starting point, in this safety planer, as it's called. We'll shave away everything we don't want. I gave myself a reference or stop mark because remember we're doing a volute, which is a little point here. I always like to put them in. They're not that hard to do. So I've got the taper like I want it. It's pretty close. I always like to leave a little bit. And I like to use that safety planer. Like a lot of these steps, you could do them several ways. You could use a pattern with a router bit. You could cut it on the bandsaw. The reason I like the safety planer is because it leaves me with a straight edge. This neck is going to curve up and then curve back down, and you can see we've got 1/2 of it done. So again, several ways to do this. I could use a file, I could put sandpaper on a barrel and just do it with abrasives. Well, I have this oscillating sander that will make short work of this. So we're going to put this curve in. It's always best to leave a little bit on there. I can do that by hand, get that little ledge off. Remember the neck's going to be considerably narrower here, and it's going to be rounded. So it'll take that, a lot of that's going to go away when we start creating the curvature of the back. So fretboard, we'll rough cut it to its tapered width, and then we'll find the center and we'll put our fret marker dots in. Starting to look like something. You have to do this now and then so you can see the end. Starting to resemble something.
Yep.
So we'll drill all these out, and it doesn't take a very deep pocket. Then we'll mix up some epoxy and put them in. My friend asked why I chose a campfire for an inlay. I said, well, if it doesn't play worth a darn, I'll throw it in the fire. I inherited this really cool fretting hammer that has a soft piece of something on it from a Luthier in Seldovia. Make a nice tie. Okay, so we're just putting all the components in place here. We've got our nut, our fretboard. We know where the 12th fret is. That's where the neck is going to join at the body. So I'm going to give myself a reference mark. And I want roughly 3/8 in the body, which I have. And often this is all done with jigs and routers, especially if a builder's doing dovetail and or bolt-on necks. I make every one by hand, so, and I can do it pretty quickly. This neck's not going to another guitar. I'm not production building. So I just find the center. I like 1 inch wide at my heel cap. We predetermined what our width is going to be. So I just connect the dots. I could make the heel cap or the back of the heel any width I want. Some, as you see, are wide and low. Some are narrow and tall. Mine are kind of average. This is where in YouTube videos it goes, a few moments later.
Yeah, I'm beginning to get that.
Let's have a quick review. Last thing I did was get this started and cut it. Did a lot of it off camera. This really hard piece of wood was offering a lot of resistance. I spared everybody from that. But anyway, once I got through it, it cut nicely. We also epoxied in our fret marker dots. So starting to look like something. Once again, I'm gonna just mark, or at least show I have a mark still where the 12th fret will join the body. because this is a short scale, not a 14 fret longer scale. And so that means we need to, from that line down, we need to cut that much. And I always try and shoot for 3/8, which we're there. So we're going to lay out and route the body for that. I'm going to use my square here just to use it as a depth gauge, you might say. Okay, then just checking to make sure I have all my angles good before I commit to the next step. Bevel square, I put it on there and I check, make sure we're good. You don't want to have a lopsided instrument. And I just need to set this on here, set the bottom of my router. Be a little bit of tuning up as part of the final shaping and finishing, but it's a good enough fit that I can go ahead and drill a hole through here. And again, I'll mention that I do an adjustable neck heel. It's not bolted on from below. It doesn't have a dovetail like a traditional or a mortise and tenon. Mine is going to sit in a pocket. The fretboard will be glued to the top of the guitar. And then your strap jack will sit here. We'll create a little flat spot for it. And it's going to have a long bolt go all the way through it into the heel block of the body. And in the heel block of the body is these screw-in anchors that has a coarse thread on the outside, and you screw that into the wood. And then the long screw, which I need to get, will thread into that nicely. When we're adjusting our action, all I have to do is turn that screw. And again, it's, I wouldn't say disguised, but it's kind of neat that you have a dual purpose, what would you call that? Strap button. Okay. Quick review, we worked on our notch or pocket for our neck, because again, we're going to do an adjustable neck heel. We drilled our hole that's going to have the long screw that's going to go in, which will have a strap jack on it. Got a very nice fit. I think we pointed that out. So I've done a couple things off camera. Number one is I've relieved some of the neck heel bottom so that just the face of this neck will rest in the pocket, and that gives me that space so the neck will move. I've gone ahead and inserted the truss rod, reason being it has to be epoxied in, and I don't think any of us want to sit around for hours and watch epoxy cure. You'll notice the truss rod is lower a little bit on one end, and I've done that. I do it as a habit because when you do a sound hole, adjustment hole, access hole, it's good to get that down and away from the back side of the guitar top. But also, In this case, what it's done is by tilting it, it gives me better access with my Allen screw for adjusting in the future. And because it's epoxied in, that Martin style channel is now integral to this neck. It would be very difficult to separate them. And because it hangs down a little bit, I had to make myself a little notch here so that it didn't hit anything. So the next thing we're going to do is continue with this insert that will accept the screw. And because of where we live, we can't always find the things we need. Ideally, I would like to walk into a store and buy one of these threaded inserts. It's got a very coarse thread on the outside with a slot for a screwdriver, and then it's got a machine screw thread on the inside. And you drill the large hole that you need, you insert that in, and then the screw goes in and out of that, and it's anchored really well. It's never going to strip, never going to fail. And I looked all over town, I couldn't find one, and I said, I'm smarter than that insert, I think I'll figure this out. So I had a bolt, it was a 3/8 inch bolt, and I put it in a vise, and I drilled the appropriate size hole down the middle, and then with my tap and die set, I threaded it, and then I cut a slot in it for my screwdriver. And it's probably worth about 10 times as much as the one that I could have, if I could have found it and bought. But anyway, I got nothing but time. So next thing I'm going to do is drill this out. And I think because I have the tool to do it, I think I will tap this and I'll put it in beautifully with a little bit of epoxy. And when you're doing metal, you reverse every quarter turn, and it cuts off the threads that you've cut in.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have to go forward and back. We're going to move on to putting on our fretboard. What I've done too is I've drilled a couple of 1/16 inch holes. This is just a toothpick. I drilled them right in the middle of a fret all the way through so that I can put this whittled down toothpick in there. And it just registers it, keeps it from moving while the glue sets. And I could probably talk about frets for a minute. In the past, I've set my fretboard on my table saw top, which is cast iron and very, very flat. And I've set my frets at that point. But what I noticed that would happen is it would bow, or I should say back bow, the fretboard, because when you may as well consider the fret tang a wedge. And when you add that many in it, it pushes it.
Yeah.
And then now I have to counteract that clamping. I've seen it done. People still do it, but I've learned to just not do it. So
We bought a house.
now we whittled one down. Here it is. Okay, while our fretboard is drying on the neck, we're going to go ahead and start finish sanding this. I ran some tape so that I could see what I'm drawing on or writing on. Seeing as the rosewood's too dark to see on. But anyway, we're trimming and shaping these straight lines down to finished size. Then we're going to spin it and we're going to start shaping. So we've got our sides straight lined into dimension. There's probably just enough there for final sanding, and it'll be dialed in at 1 13/16. And at the 12th fret where it joins the body, we're at 2 3/16. And then if you were to go down to the 14th fret, you'd see 2 1/4, which is very typical. So I'm happy with that. Mark. I'm going to take a piece of paper like we did back when we made snowflakes and other things as children. I'll put that on the halfway mark and find a radius that I like, open it up, and then I have symmetry. Dragon tail. I'm going to show you the circle. We're going to go below it and start carving everything away. So I work away from that. And this operation is if you had to watch somebody do it, it's like listening to a drumming circle. Unless you're drumming, it'll probably drive you nuts. That says first, meaning first fret, and then down at the 10th. I use the 10th as a reference because you can't get down past the heel, and I'll probably have to compromise because I probably can't get to the 10th, but this is a good starting point for up here. We're getting down there, you just got to keep making sure you check. Yeah. Well, I don't know how long I've been carving away on this, but as you can see, we're getting there. The lute is taking shape. A little bit more to do around there. I also need to take some of the mass out so it's not like a log, but anyway, progress. Well, we're at another step here. The neck is all sanded down. I saved you all from the painful long steps of sanding and filing and sanding and filing, but super smooth. I have really good symmetry. I like my thickness. Feels nice. I'm going to start putting frets on. I put 2 on already because I needed to gauge with a string where I needed to do this sculpting so that the strings don't hit. So, but we're going to continue on, get all our frets on. The fretboard's been sanded to 800 grit. So I'm just going to, I have some medium gauge fret wire. I pre-bend it, kind of hyper bend it so that it will fit without flat spots. I don't get too sophisticated. Often you'll see a board with a whole bunch of holes drilled in it, the same amount of holes as the frets. They're numbered. Have this cool little hammer with a brass face, which is softer than the nickel frets. And then it's got a super hard plastic. I don't even know what kind of plastic that is. It's probably from the 50s, but it's really neat. And I think I inherited it from a luthier, passed away. So I decided to stain this. When this gets a finish on it, if it was natural, it just seemed a little too stark for me. So this will give it a little bump. But we are going to do grain fill on the neck, and you have to do your staining first. It's a delicate process, and I'll probably have to wipe over it again with the stain. And something I did was I took a Q-tip and some lacquer and I wiped down the edge so that I don't spill any stain onto it.
Right.
Don't throw anything away around here.
No.
This instrument is, again, you know, made from stuff on hand. Trying to get in on all that mahogany without contaminating. Not just for ears. So the neck is stained, and then it got a shot of shellac to seal it in, and I decided to dig out my old crystal lac. It's kind of a acrylic grain fill, and get all these grain pockets filled in. It's a bit of work, but the end result pays off. You just work kind of diagonal to all your pores. Nice thing about this stuff is it's non-toxic. Boy, that red just jumps out. You know, this stuff doesn't require thinning, but it really does, especially on your first coat. It's called a wash coat, because you want it to lay out really flat and really grab. And then the next coats are called build coats. That's it. 3 coats. Gibson of Jethro Tull was the whole inspiration for me wanting to build parlor guitars.